Good morning, everyone. I am Taylor Post, Swiftland's Office Manager, and I would like to welcome you all to today's webinar using DPLA Educational Resources, and today's presenter, Kayla Zayas-Ruiz. Kayla Zayas-Ruiz is the Sunshine State Digital Network Coordinator and has multiple years of digital collections experience. She manages the day-to-day activities of the network and provides training and outreach to cultural heritage institutions throughout the state of Florida. Kayla received her MLIS from Florida State University in 2013. Please welcome Kayla and enjoy her webinar this morning.
Hello, good morning, everyone. So, can everyone hear me okay? Okay, perfect. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So first, let's start with what is DPLA. So DPLA stands for the Digital Public Library of America. It's a free national digital library that provides access to materials from libraries, archives, and museums from across the United States. And it's a network of all of these institutions who make their content available through a single website. There are currently about 35 million digital objects available to view on the Digital Public Library of America. So broadly, DPLA offers cultural heritage materials. So this is categorized broadly in order to gather as much different kinds of materials in different formats as possible. They pull together collections from over 3,000 institutions, and they have everything from manuscript documents to historic family photographs, sheet music, and even physical objects. So it's a really broad range, large amount of primary resources. And since the institutions that they pull from are all based in the United States, the strength of the collections is American history and culture. But it's definitely not just limited to American history. There is international scope in the collections and world history as well. So a lot of websites have digital collections online. So what makes DPLA unique? DPLA is specifically bringing together both big national institutions, so like the National Archives and the Smithsonian, along with smaller, more local collections. For example, the North Miami Historical Society and Florida Memory through the Sunshine State Digital Network. So in order to provide access to cultural heritage materials in a unique way, they're able to pull all of these different sources together in one place. So all of the resources that are in the database come from other institutions where they have been reviewed by information professionals, so content is vetted and reliable, which is different from doing like a normal search on Google or something like that. So what is SSDN? So SSDN stands for the Sunshine State Digital Network. We are the DPLA service hub for Florida. So we provide metadata to the Digital Public Library of America and offer tiered services to our contributing partners. To date, we have shared nearly 215,000 records from 14 contributing institutions in the state of Florida. We are a network like DPLA, so we have taken a new approach to collaborative digital work in the state of Florida, and we work collaboratively to share resources among our subhubs and our content contributors. We also have 56 working group members representing 36 different institutions. Then they work to promote, train, and create standards for our contributing institutions and users. Currently, our implementation leads are our Florida State University, the University of Miami, and Florida International University. They are serving as the hubs right now in the state, collecting content and creating new partnerships around the state. We also have a very strong partnership with the Division of Library and Information Services. You may know them as the State Library, and they have been strong partners in helping us to get new content, as well as sharing the message about DPLA as a resource. So how can you use DPLA? You can use DPLA in a lot of different ways. You can use it for education, which is what we're going to be focusing on today. You can use it for family research and genealogy. You can use it just if you're interested in learning more about specific topics and finding information about historical topics and literature and other things like that. And you can use it for scholarly research as well. The DPLA does provide user guides for these as well as an additional user guide for developers, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. So let's start with exhibitions. DPLA provides a set of curated exhibitions that are designed to tell stories with the collective content that's available in DPLA to a broad audience. There are currently 32 exhibitions on the site. DPLA and its partners have curated a series of virtual exhibitions highlighting specific themes such as American imperialism, prohibition, the Transcontinental Railroad, and the World War II home front. So these curated exhibitions include full images, documents, and other media from DPLA's collections and detailed information about special topics. Exhibitions are curated by DPLA staff, DPLA partner institutions, and graduate students in library and information science and public history. So you can navigate to specific sections of interest when you get into an exhibition. So once you click on an exhibition, it'll take you to a main page with a general explanation of the topic. And then on the left-hand side, you will see various topics within the exhibition. So if you click on Explore Exhibition, it'll take you to the first section. And pages within exhibitions include featured items and explanatory text and descriptive captions. So if we're looking at this page, you'll see on the right-hand side some descriptive text, and then you'll see various images that go along with this topic. So you'll see underneath the photograph, there's going to be another photograph that will also have an additional caption that adds to this particular section of the exhibition. When you click on Next, it takes you to the next section of the exhibition, and so on and so forth. So you can, there are various subsections within each exhibition, and the nice thing about this again is that it does bring together items from various collections from across the country. So these exhibitions put together things that would not normally be seen together, which is a nice bonus, and it shows the power of the collective collection that they have started from the various institutions that contribute to them. So again, you would see things in here, like this particular item is from the New York Public Library. You might see things in here from the National Archives or from even a smaller local historical society that might have something relevant to this topic, which again is not something you would normally see together in a physical exhibition or in other virtual exhibitions. So it's a good primer to some of these topics that they've curated. Another feature that they have, which is similar but not as highly curated, is the Browse by Topic feature. So these are highlights from these particular topic areas. They don't have as much explanation to them, but they are areas that get searched very often on DPLA. So they decided to create a series of topic-based browsing sections. So if you click on a particular section, we can click on American Civil War here, and it'll take you to a series of subtopics within this larger, broader topic. And each subtopic does have a small little description that goes along with it. So we'll click on Politics of the Union, And when you click on Politics of the Union, it'll take you to a list of between 50 to 60 individual items selected from DPLA's collections related to that topic. And DPLA does have plans to continue to add more topics to this feature in the future. So they do plan to expand this particular feature on the website. It is, again, less curated than the exhibitions, but does provide a good primer and starting point for research on these particular topics that are frequently searched on the site. Okay, so another really good feature on the website is the Create Lists feature. The Create Lists feature allows users to create their own curated lists of topics related to their own research or area of interest. It's very simple to use. The list feature is tied to your browser, so no login is required, no password is you don't have to remember a password. It allows it allows for you to privately create new lists on the particular browser on the computer that you're on. So for example, if you're using Chrome and you open Firefox on the same computer, your lists will not be available there, but they will be available on your Chrome browser. So keep that in mind if you're using a public computer or anything like that, that your lists will remain on that browser on that computer. And you can have multiple lists. You're not limited to one. So while you're doing research, you can create separate lists based on different topics or subtopics within your research, or lesson plans or anything that you might be preparing going through the sources in DPLA. And because it is tied to the browser and we know that you might want to take the resources with you, you are able to download your lists, and it downloads as a spreadsheet. So you will have the relevant information to your source available to you in a spreadsheet, including the title, the date, creator, a description if there's a description, where the material came from, and a link to the source. So just real quick, the list feature will have, we'll come back to. This will be particularly useful when we're talking about creating your own primary source sets. Okay, so I talked a little bit earlier about a user guide for developers. DPLA does have an open API. For those of you who don't know what an API is, it's essentially, it stands for Application Programming Interface, and it allows for computers to talk to each other. So it's what developers will use in order to give commands and get replies from another system. So it allows, this open API allows developers from all walks of life to build tools, programs, widgets, plugins, and all kinds of really interesting things from the content that's available in DPLA. So you can use this feature in your coding clubs and things like that to provide a library of content for apps that you might, that your students might be building or your patrons might be building. The DPLA app library contains a handful of applications built by independent developers interested in seeing what open cultural heritage data can look in new and interesting contexts. So we'll take a look at a couple examples of some apps that people have built off of DPLA. So there's a color browse app. The color browse app will take, you type in a color and it will create a collage of items within DPLA that contain that color. This app is no longer live online, but the code for it is available on GitHub. So you should be able to access the code for that online still. The Browse by County app allows for you to drill into a specific area, and it pulls up content in DPLA that took place in that area. So if you hover over an area or click on an area, it will provide you with a list of results of content that is tagged for that particular region or county. And then the culture collage is another example. This particular collage is about baseball. So you type in a topical area and it gives you a collage of images related to that topic. So this collage in particular is related to items in DPLA about baseball. There's also other uses for the API that you can access. There's currently an African American online library called Umbra Search that pulls content from DPLA related to African American history in the country. There's Twitter bots that you can build using the API. One of the Twitter bots is Historical Cats. And it pulls an image of cats from DPLA and posts them on Twitter. And there's also an app that pulls from both the DPLA API and the Europeana API. So you can search both of those sources at the same time. And Europeana is the European version of DPLA. But you can view a lot of different source code from various developers and learn more about how to use the API in the link that I just posted in the chat box. So if you're interested in learning more about APIs and how to use the Open API, I encourage you to check that out. Okay, so now we're going to talk more about primary source sets, which is going to be the primary focus of our webinar today. So the primary source sets are topic-based highlight reels with various collections of different types of resources. So you may have letters, photographs, posters, oral histories, video clips, sheet music, and many other types of resources available in a single primary source set. These were designed to be used for grades 6 through 12 and the first couple years of higher education, and they were designed by secondary and collegiate educators on DPLA's Education Advisory Committee. So these were created by teachers for teachers. And there are currently over 100 topics available in the primary source sets, varying around U.S. history, American literature, world history, the history of science and technology, and art. So these sets are designed to help students develop critical thinking skills by exploring these various topics, and each set includes a topic overview, 10 to 15 primary sources, links to related resources, and a teaching guide. And the Education Advisory Committee is no longer working on new sets. The work was grant-based, but they are looking into other ways to create new sets around specific topics, adding additional topics there. So you can start trying to find more information on how to use the source sets in the education user guide, and it gives you some tips on how to get started with primary source sets if that's something you want to visit after the webinar, but we'll go ahead and go into a little bit more detail now. So first, we'll talk about finding the right source set for your course or topic that you are wanting to teach on. So you'll want to start here at the drop-down menus where you can narrow down by subject, time period, or by the most recently added source sets. And they have lots of different topics that you can pick from, like women's history, world history, and other topics like that. And then you can narrow the time periods to like the 20th century, World War II, various things like that. So once you use the drop-down menus, you'll find various subjects that align with courses around the country. And then there's thematic subjects like migration, women, and Native Americans. Time period categories align with the U.S. National History Standards, and you can use both drop-down menus at the same time, so you don't have to limit yourself to one drop-down menu at a time. So if you wanted to narrow your search down to sets about women during the Great Depression and World War II, you can use both drop-down menus to find the appropriate source sets for those topics. So we'll do an overview of the what the source sets look like. So the source sets are written for both students and teacher audiences. So it is meant to be understood at a broad level by students as well as teachers. And you'll see when you go into the set, you'll have an overview text here. You can click on Show Full Overview to get the entire description of the set. You'll see 10 to 15 sources in each set. And again, these sources will be a wide range of different kinds of materials that are available in DPLA. So you're not just going to see a set that's only photographs or that's only documents or things like that. You're going to get a wide variety of formats for students to take a look at. And you'll see a teaching guide as well, and an additional resources tab, which I didn't highlight here, but the additional resources tab will have links to other sources that might have more information about that particular topic that are outside of DPLA. So that's what you'll find under additional resources. So let's take a look at the teaching guide. Oh no, we'll get to the teaching guide. First, we're going to look at an individual source within a set. So once you click on a source, what you'll see is a source image or document in a viewer that you can zoom into. You can page through a book, or you can play or a media player where you can play audio or video if that's what the source is. And then a brief caption will provide context on how the item fits into the set. You'll also see an option to cite this item to provide a citation. You can view more information, or you can go to the original resource here on the right-hand side. So if we clicked on View in North Carolina Digital Heritage Center, it would take us directly to the source where this came from. And you might be able to, you'll be able to find more metadata. The view item information will take you to the page in DPLA for that item. And then there's also a little section that has tips for students. So it gives them some questions to think about when they're looking at the source, to evaluate the author's point of view, the author's purpose, the historical context of the resource, and the audience that it's intended for. So now we'll take a look at the teaching guide. So each primary source set is going to have a teaching guide. Each teaching guide will include 5 to 10 discussion questions that link back to the specific sources that they reference. At least one classroom activity will also be available, and these are more hands-on and interactive ideas for how to engage the sources with your students. And it will also include analysis and inquiry prompts and primary source analysis tools for students. The teaching guide purposely does not include a full lesson plan so that you can customize how the material is used in your classroom or program at your library. So it is meant to be flexible for your needs, but does provide a good starting point for discussion and activities. So different things you can do with these source sets is practice document-based questions. So you ask students to use the source evidence to support an argument or position. So you can pull sources from sets to devise document-based questions for your students, or assign a document-based question from each one of the teaching guides. To use a short selection, or you can use the whole excerpt. So this is an excerpt from the 1916 congressional bill that established the National Park Service. And so you can use this to ask questions about the economic value of the park system, and what this document was meant to, who it was meant for, and what it was meant to present to its audience. This is another example of a document-based question. So this is a letter from Andrew Jackson, and a message to Congress for the concerning the Indian Removal Act. So you can use these two documents together to explain whether Indian removal was a democratic action taken by the federal government or an invasion of Cherokee sovereignty. So you can help students think critically about different historical events and form their own opinions using the documents available to them in the set. You can also encourage them to look for additional documents to help them support their argument or come to a different conclusion. You can also use it to contextualize literature. So there are various primary source sets around commonly taught works of literature, and help place them in a historical context. So they do have sets related to the titles that you see here on your screen, but they also have other ones particularly related to Florida, like Their Eyes Were Watching God by a Florida author, and it does take place in Florida. So it helps you take these works of literature, provides additional historical context around these works of literature, and helps put them in historical context. So again, you can encourage your students to take a look at additional resources in DPLA, and also analyze these works of literature through the lens of those resources provided in the sets. And you can also use these to complement existing course materials that you're using. So you can mix and match sources from sets to complement your lessons and help students make connections between topics and ideas. And you can mix and match different sets that are related to the same topic or time periods, related to different audiences. So you can see here all of these examples on the screen are related to the Civil War and Reconstruction era. So you can take these various sets, mix and match the sources within them, and tailor your lesson plans around these mix and match sources that have already been selected for you. Something else you can do is add student-generated questions to a set. So after a student analyzes the sets, you can ask them to write their own discussion questions to add to the list provided in the teaching guide. And this way they're also thinking outside of these existing questions. You're asking them to think even more critically about the sources and about the historical event that they're trying to put into context. These two examples here are from the attacks on American soil, Pearl Harbor, and September 11th primary source set. So you can see they can take a more recent event and an event that would have happened around their grandparents' time period and have them think about various things around those two events that affected those two different generations, but had similar reverberations of fear and war and things like that. So it just allows them to think critically as well. And I know a lot of our students were not alive during that anymore, but some of your college students might have been. So they can think about their own personal experiences related to that as well. And it also allows students to put current events in context with historical events. So this example here is about fake news in the 1890s, and they can take a look at how yellow journalism affected people's perceptions of the truth back in the 1890s, and how the media today is struggling with some of the same issues in different formats, and how we can think critically about the news and how that affects people's perceptions of what's going on around them. So additionally, let's say that you can't find a set that meets your needs or that you can use in your classroom. You can try to create your own set and build it from the 35 million objects that are available in DPLA. So this again is where the list feature is going to come in handy, because then you can start saving your primary sources in a list without having to remember what they are or save them as a bookmark. You can save them as a list and download the CSV so you have your set all together in one document. So first, once you have identified a gap in the existing sets, you want to make sure that you narrow down your topic and settle on something specific. So here we're going to look for American Indians in the early 20th century. And we're going to type in a search for American Indians. And once we've started our search, there are various ways that we can narrow down our search through faceting on the left-hand side of the search results. So you can narrow your search results by subject headings, by object type, and also by year, which is probably going to be the most useful for this if we're looking for American Indians in the early 20th century. So we can ensure that we're getting our results for the intended topic. So next, you'll want to decide what kind of sources you'd like to gather around that particular topic. So a good primary source set will have lots of different types of sources. It'll have visual, textual, and maybe even audio or film sources if you're researching a more modern subject. So there would be potentially some film or audio available for the early 20th century. Here you can see that there are 4 objects labeled as moving image. So those are going to be things that are on film. They might be oral histories or actual film footage. So you can narrow down by topic. The reason that you want to have various types of resources is you don't want to bore your students with only textual documents or only images. Images might be difficult to really get some context available, and you don't want them to try to have to read 10 to 15 different resources. So you want to provide a rich variation of media available to your students. So you'll find that the more you narrow your search, the more diminished your results will be in the search. Before you diminish your search too much, I recommend scrolling through the results to see what comes up. You'll find things that you didn't know were available, and possibly items that you may not have thought to search for or known the search terms to find. So I encourage you to scroll through the results. Don't just stop after the first few. Again, you'll probably find some things that you didn't think might be available or didn't know existed that would be useful in your own set that you think would add to the skill building and critical thinking of your students. So here you can see 8 objects for this particular topic. This particular set includes government records, photographs, and a school's internal scheduling system. You'll also see a public health poster, a map, propaganda materials, and even a film, which you can see doesn't have a thumbnail but has a moving image, a little icon there. So the more types of sources you include in your set, the more interesting it is for your students. They can easily compare and contrast different points of view in a varied set. For example, here the views of a public health worker, a government official, and that of an American Indian themselves. And they can corroborate their inferences from sources within a set. So including various viewpoints as well as varying media will be important to think about when you're creating your own set. Okay, so I'm going to give you a few tips for searching DPLA. You can use Boolean operators just like any other search feature that you would find in the library or online. And a little persistence and creativity goes a long way when doing your searches. You can use exact phrases by including in quotation marks. Again, using Boolean operators such as or, not, and then using wildcards like an asterisk. So that you can maximize the number of results without having to type in multiple search terms. So I want to just put a little disclaimer in here that no search engine is Google except for Google. So you may have to do a few searches to get the kind of results that you're looking for. But again, you'll find vetted sources that have been vetted by information professionals on here that you wouldn't find as easily on Google. So here are some examples of some searches that you can do. So woman and women in keywords, you'll get lots of different types of results. So if you use a wildcard in place of the vowel, you will get results for both woman and women and can help you solve that issue. So you'll get all of those results in one search instead of two. You can do Ellis Island on its own, or you do Ellis Island in quotation marks and get different search results because you're using exact, you're searching for the exact term. And then you want to consider the different ways that you might search for a specific topic. So like World War II is a really good example. You might search for it using World War and then the 2 I's for the Roman numerals. You might do World War II with a Arabic numeral, or you could do WW2, WWII, lots of different ways that you can search for World War II, and you'll get different results. So you might get something in one search that you didn't find in something else that is going to be really valuable for your program or classroom. So now we'll do a sample search here. So you'll start on the DPLA homepage. This screen grab is a little bit old because you'll see this only says 21 million, but there's a lot more in there now. And the main site for DPLA is dp.la. It's really easy to remember. So you'll start at the homepage, and here we'll do a search for Nat Turner. Nat Turner was a slave preacher who was very instrumental and outspoken during the abolitionist movement. So we clicked search, and now we are on our search results page for Nat Turner. So we touched a little bit earlier on how we can refine our searches, but this is a full view of the search results page. You'll see here on the left you can refine by type of resource, subject, you can refine by date, by partner, by location, by language. There are materials in DPLA that are in languages other than English, so that might be useful depending on what you're trying to teach. And you can also narrow by contributing institution. So there's lots of different facets that you can use to narrow your search. So here we're going to go ahead and click on the Bible belonging to Nat Turner. So once we click on that particular resource, it takes you to the information page for that particular resource. It'll also have a thumbnail available of that resource. And the reason it's a thumbnail and not the full item is because DPLA collects the metadata for these collections, and that allows for them to not have to store the individual items in one place because they're already being hosted somewhere else. So you'll see a thumbnail and some descriptive information about the resource. So you'll see various subject headings. You'll see the contributing institution's name. So this particular resource came from the National Museum of African American History and Culture. And you'll see the location of the origin of the resource, right? So if you want to view the full item, you can click on that nice little icon under the thumbnail to view full item. And once you click on that, it will take you to the Smithsonian Institution's digital collections page. So it will always take you to the original source website. So for example, if this came from Florida Memory, it would take you to Florida Memory's website to view the full item. And here you'll see that there is actually some additional information about the resource, such as its dimensions and some collections information and other additional metadata that you wouldn't have seen on the DPLA site, but could provide additional context for you. And it'll also take you to the full item, so you can actually page through the Bible in this instance. So that's an example of how to do a search in DPLA. And you can find more information about the educational resources provided by DPLA through these links. They are available in the slides that will be shared with you after the presentation. And I encourage you to join the DPLA education mailing list. You don't get spammed with a ton of emails, but they will provide you with news on any new educational resources, as well as opportunities for additional training. They also have a page dedicated to National History Day resources that they tailor to the
saw somebody typing, but then it stopped. Oh, okay. So if there are no questions, thank you, Kayla, for a informative webinar this morning. Attendees, if you enjoyed this webinar, we ask that you join us on August 27th for Kayla's next training here at the Swiflin office, Scanning and Metadata for Digital Collections. As always, we encourage you to keep an eye on the Swiflin CE calendar, the Swiflin Facebook page, or your message from the listserv. Thank you everyone for attending and have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Deb. Thank you, Kayla.